We're going to cover a topic that some of y'all are going to go, well, these folks deserve to not get the treatment. They're drug addicts. It was their choice. I beg to differ with you. I know people who were known to be hardworking individuals. They had done what they were supposed to do. They were good parents. They were good family members. They got hurt and got put on different drugs and became addicted to drugs because of what was going on. Now, there is a drug that can help fight this that is getting harmed in the process because the federal government is causing problems with people getting access to a treatment that has been proven to help people. It's almost like they want people to stay in the prison system. It's almost like they want people to stay as slave labor in the prison system. It really does. But this entire video I've got two videos from doctors. I'm going to read you off some doctor testimony. Basically, I'm going to cover this topic, so stick around. It's going to be a little bit longer of a video, but I think it's going to be more than worth it for you. Oh, and by the way, if you like these topics that hardly anybody else is talking about, click subscribe. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't cause you any problems. It helps me get to the point that I'll be able to bring on people that are actually dealing with all of these issues, politicians and whatnot, and get you real news with real interviews. Okay, so here we go.
Howdy, y'all. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. What we have here is a channel to communicate. I want you folks to be thinking by the time you leave my videos. Why? Because I'm tired of people talking via what other people tell them to think. So, watch my video and enjoy the chance to think for yourself.
Bupe.
Bupe.
What is bupe?
Bupe.
Bupe stands for buprenorphine.
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 Buprenorphina.
Bupe stands for buprenorphine.
Buprenorphine is an opioid medication, but it is a partial opioid agonist.
It's the only office-based medication that any doctor or nurse practitioner or prescriber can offer to treat opioid use disorder that's been shown to reduce the risk of dying from an overdose by more than 50%.
Buprenorphine is administered in a couple of different ways. The first is sublingual.
Which is under the cheek or under the tongue.
Either a film or tablet.
Or as a weekly or monthly medication that someone gets an injection for in their doctor's office.
There are many benefits to taking buprenorphine. Primarily, it's a life-saving medication that has been shown and demonstrated in numerous studies to save lives.
It increases the likelihood that someone will achieve recovery from opioid use disorder.
It's completely safe for prescribing and for patients to pick it up themselves and take it through outpatient clinic.
It provides, in a sense, the stable foundation that patients need to do the restorative and healing work to get them through the recovery process.
It worked for me, and it's an opportunity to get sober and give you a normal, quote-unquote, life.
You can be able to have it accessibly for a lot of people that need it and readily in the moment that they need it.
There are many providers in the addiction team that are more than happy to answer your questions and help you get started.
People have the right to live longer and have a better life.
Bupe can give you a life to live.
Buprenorphine me salvó mi vida.
Bupe nazondo.
Bupe saves lives.
Buprenorphine salva vidas.
Buprenorphine salva vidas.
Bupe saves lives.
Okay, so got a Substack link down below, as I do a lot of times. Um, you're going to be able to research your own stuff, and this is the first article I'm going to go over comes from the press rundown. Um, Buprenorphine, a medication used to treat opioid addiction, has demonstrated significant potential in combating the ongoing opioid crisis, particularly in relation to substances like heroin and fentanyl. Despite its effectiveness, its widespread adoption remains limited. The medication was first highlighted in a 2016 case involving a patient at Highland Hospital in Oakland, California, who sought help for his addiction, was prescribed buprenorphine as part of an emergency department initiative. A pivotal study published by researchers at Yale University in 2015 underscored the drug's benefits. In this study, participants using heroin or prescription opioids were divided into three groups, one receiving a referral to treatment services, another receiving a referral with brief counseling, and a third receiving both along with the drug. Results indicated that those receiving buprenorphine were twice as likely to remain in treatment after 1 month, significantly improving their chances of avoiding fatal overdoses. Yale's study implications were profound, prompting calls for emergency room doctors to incorporate addiction treatment in their practices. While the drug's effectiveness at a population level is supported by evidence such as 80% reduction in opioid overdose deaths in France after its introduction, its integration into the U.S. healthcare system has been slow. The reluctance to fully embrace the drug as a treatment option raises questions about barriers to its use, including stigma around addiction, the traditional role of emergency departments, and complexities of long-term addiction treatments as the opioid crisis continues to evolve. The medical community faces the challenges of reconciling these factors to enhance treatment and effectiveness.
Buprenorphine is much more difficult to overdose on. So for those patients who are using methadone and chipping on top to sort of boost their methadone dose, much harder to do with buprenorphine. Buprenorphine really sort of attaches to those opiate receptors and blocks other opiates from being effective. So we tell them about the ceiling effect of buprenorphine, that if you're feeling good on 16 milligrams, you might not necessarily feel better on 24 or 32 milligrams, that those opiate receptors are almost globally occupied at a 16 milligram dose. And it's interesting, we find that folks who come in the door almost always during the first week, patients will say, hey, I have something I have to tell you. And they'll say, well, I used last night. And we'll say, well, thank you for sharing that with us. And what happened? I'm really pissed because it took me 2 hours to find my dealer and $40 and I didn't even get high. And so we're like, hey, sounds like an interesting learning experience. And they're like, well, I know the buprenorphine is working.
Okay, this next bit, which I think is actually very interesting as well, via Pew Trust, Pew Institute, they asked several questions, but I'm only going to cover one of the questions of two doctors. What factors prevent buprenorphine from being more widely prescribed to treat OUD? OUD is opioid use disorder. This is from Dr. Rebecca Haffage. Ironically, federal legislation intended to expand access to treatment for OUD, the Drug Addiction Act of 2000, has discouraged buprenorphine prescribing because it requires healthcare providers to get additional training and receive permission from the DEA, known as the X-waiver, before they can prescribe the drug in outpatient settings, and these requirements exacerbate other barriers. Stigma, for example, from both providers and patients is a major concern, fueled in part by the X-waiver. Many practitioners perceive patients with OUD as more challenging population to treat. They may view them as untrustworthy or likely to divert the medication to others, and patients who may struggle to find a provider even willing to treat them are often fearful of being labeled as having an addiction, given the negative connotations often associated with such a label. In my research, we've observed Physicians, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants expressed concerns about the lack of institutional and peer support for prescribing buprenorphine. These providers do not want to be the only ones in their practice offering this medication. They want peer and mentor support both in managing the patient load and in getting input from colleagues when treating difficult cases. Yay, the next person is Dr. Eric Ketchum. Without question, the X-waiver, which allows physicians to prescribe buprenorphine for OUD only after completing 8 hours of training and obtaining a special license from the DEA, is the biggest hindrance to treatment. For doctors who maybe don't want to treat patients with OUD, it's easy to use a waiver requirement as a way out, but even motivated prescribers face limitations. In my training, providers can apply for a DEA license immediately, but they still wait up to 90 days for the agency to process the application before they can prescribe. How many patients could we have helped in that time? In addition, a DEA license only allows prescribers in a primary care setting to treat up to 30 patients in the first year. When you consider the prevalence of this disease, this cap keeps people from accessing life-saving care. The X-waiver was born from stigma associated with addiction and our collective failure to recognize this condition as a disease. Prescribers are not required to undergo training or obtain certification for any other drug, including other opioids or benzodiazepines, the drugs most frequently involved in overdoses. For too long, addiction medicine has been a part of standard medical education and training, and patients are suffering as a result. Okay. As you can tell from every bit of this information that I have brought you, we've got this major screw up that's going on in our government. You've got people of both political parties that could have fixed this problem. They ain't fixed anything. Matter of fact, they're making it worse. These doctors know what they're talking about. This drug has been proven to be worth using. But hey, if we keep people addicted on drugs, they're going to keep committing crimes. That means that the government can keep taking their property and their money, and they can keep them in prison, which, well, they can be used as slave labor. That's the problem. And don't tell me, oh, well, these people didn't know. These people, some of these folks, not every one of them, but some of these folks were actually productive citizens that got in the middle of a bad situation. Because there were so many of them. Well, I would rather save the good people because this is becoming a problem in this country. If you walk out on the streets of some of these cities, you've got all these folks that are laying on the street because they became drug addicted. And some of this is because of the medical industry. So maybe it's time that we start getting the problem fixed. This has been Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Y'all have a good day now. Bye.
Folks, I just want to say thank you for listening. I want to thank you for taking your time. I want to hear what your comments are about what you think on this topic, because your comments are what's important, not necessarily mine. I don't care if you're Republican. I don't care if you're conservative. I don't care if you're liberal. I don't care if you're Democrat. I want to hear your opinion on these topics. I want to thank you yet again for listening to my video. Like, subscribe, and all that other hoopla. This has been Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Y'all have a good day now. Bye.